And I proposed a kind of a hypothesis recently that the word I was looking for is quantum foam. Very technical term, quantum mechanics, but it's got a nice poetic feel. And that is, when you're attending to the space of the mind, you have a sense of it's just a sheer emptiness, like just nothing, and then something happens in it, or in that vacuity, is there something happening that's not this appearance versus that appearance? More like, again, speaking poetically, nothing strict about this, but more like background radiation, just kind of like a fizz, a foaming, a shimmering in the space itself, which again has that mood of dynamism, mood of pregnancy, mood of potential, ready to display as an appearance, a thought, and so forth, or as a dream for that matter. So, such for the space of the mind. But as we attend more and more closely, and we're spending more hours perhaps, taking the mind as the path, this is clearly challenging us to attend more closely, which means to arouse vividness, acuity, high resolution, and just overall the fact that we never know what's coming up, that is from moment to moment. This is the most unpredictable of all the shamatha methods, and from moment to moment in terms of you don't know what's coming up next. If you just controlling it, because it just keeps them above the threshold of melting into, and so totally relaxed and you fall asleep. So that's just the nature of this practice, that it is one that kind of is bracing. And it's fine. It's fine to attend more closely with higher definition, higher resolution, see the subtleties, see not only thoughts, but thoughts that are about to emerge and never quite break the surface, and then subside back into. Tzong spoke of that, and it certainly is. But here's the point, and it's a familiar refrain, and I'm going to say it again. The higher your pyramid, you'll be deepening the sense of relaxation, right? Then you will find yourself top heavy. And then you'll start getting a little buzz, a bit of attention, a bit of hyper, a bit of feeling wired. And then you may have pressure heart starting to build up in the head or in the face. You have more insomnia, feeling a bit restless, ill at ease, and so forth. And that's just all a very clear indication. You're top heavy. You have an upside down pyramid. It's going to fall over. So what I'd like to do for this session, without much further ado, is go back, and it'll be a silent session, so it'll be at your leisure for you to determine how you want to partition the session. But I would say more or less the first half. It could be more or less the first half. Go back to settling the body in its natural state. Back to the same type of awareness, but instead of attending to the space of the mind, attending to the space of the body and whatever arises. But you notice my words there. I'm using exactly parallel words, attending to the space of the body and whatever arises. It's a wide range of sensations, but also feelings. My ankle right now itches. I don't really like itches. I want to scratch it. Good, now it's gone. So that was within the somatic space, right? And so we have a simple question, really, really simple. I've asked the question, and I think you've engaged with the question in your own experience of whether you can, in fact, attend to the space of the mind, whether there's something to attend to that has qualities. And I think you have some sense, from your own experience, what the answer to that is. Well, we can ask the same question. Can you attend to, can you perceive, and not only imagine or project, the space of the body? Just a way of speaking, or is it actually a space that you can identify? And then, of course, you can ask, very simply, this is not an analysis, but just a close examination. Okay, there's a space of the body. There certainly is a domain of experience in which somatic experiences, sensations are arising. That's kind of undeniable. But we can ask a simple question. Does it have borders? Your body does, sure. There it is. That's straightforward. Skin, that's pretty it's defining of the borders of the body. But that's as we see it visually, right? And as we measure it physically and so forth, we're not questioning that, it's true. But from this first person, what's it like to be embodied? We've gotten so used to it, but it's so remarkable. I have no idea what it's like to be a glass of water. I think there isn't anything such as what it's like to be a glass of water, because there's no consciousness in it. But I can be conscious of the glass of water from outside, and scientists are looking at the appearances, the objective appearances of all types of physical phenomena, including the brain. but it's all appearances. It's all from the outside. Even if you start shaving the brain away, it's all outside, all the way down to a neuron, all the way down to an elementary particle. It's all outside. Whereas here, this remarkable thing, there's a book composed by 3 friends of mine called The Embodied Mind. Mind is Francisco Varela, Eleanor Roche, and Melvin Thompson. It's a good book. And they made a very good point with the title, and that is, mind is embodied. We are viewing the body from the inside out. And it's the only physical entity in the universe that we can do that. We can't do that with another person's body. We can touch, we can see and so forth, but not from the inside. This is the only physical entity in the universe that we can do it from the inside. So what's the space of the body? Does it have contours? Does it have a color? Is it dark? Is it black? Is it transparent? Does the space have a shape? We're not questioning the body does, of course it does. But the space, does that have a shape? So check that out. And a final point before we start, stillness and motion, stillness and movement. You've heard it time and time again. Well, it's not only the stillness of your awareness attending to the fluctuations, the sensations arising and passing, coming and going in the space of the body, and then the appearances coming and going in the space of the mind, but also itself, relatively speaking, is it not true that the space itself is still? The space of the mind, even if it's fizzing, even if it's foaming, even if it's effervescent and shimmering, is not moving here or there, and that it's quite homogeneous, isn't it? I mean, like background radiation is quite, if we're really dealing with the analog of the energy of empty space that I spoke about this morning, which is a physical fact, if we're talking about something like that, then it doesn't go in an ebb and flow, it doesn't fluctuate, it doesn't have spikes, it's like background radiation. It's not the same, by the way, but it's like that. And so that is a relative stillness. It's a relative stillness. But then, of course, the thought of something comes up. An image of something comes up, and then it vanishes. Stillness within the space. The space is stillness, relatively speaking. The events taking place within it are motion. Similarly, the stillness of the space of your body and the motion of sensations and feelings arising in that space. Stillness and motion. And we see here something right immediately experiential, phenomenological. There's no belief or mysticism here of any sort, nothing transcendent. But then if we look further down the road to taking Dharmata as the path, because that's the next one. You take the mind as the path, and then you take Dharmata, ultimate reality as the path. Right? You do that, well now you're right in the domain of the Heart Sutra, perfection of wisdom, Madhyamaka. Oh, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Apart from form there is no emptiness, apart from emptiness there is no form. Stillness and motion. Emptiness is still. Emptiness doesn't move, it doesn't shift, it doesn't do stuff. Form does. But the form is nothing other than empty. The form itself is empty. Emptiness itself is taking on form. Stillness and motion. And then we go to the deepest level. Rigpa is beyond coming and going. Primordially, timelessly, beyond coming and going, rising and passing, beyond all conceptual frameworks. Stillness, primordial stillness, beyond time stillness. That's really still. And yet, constantly manifesting in all manner of displays. Stillness and motion. Big topic. All the way through. All the way through. So, good. Let's practice for 24 minutes, see what happens. So let's plunge right back into this swiftly running current. Kamatana's presentation of Shamatha. We see a theme that is very, very strong in emphasized here, is that the role of Shamatha is to enable you to transcend the configurations, the constructs of thought. It's kind of like escape velocity. If you send a rocket up with too little energy, it will just fall back, of course. But if you send it with enough, then it will escape the gravitational field of the Earth and go into deep space. So we have the gravitational field, so to speak, of our concepts, our theoretical frameworks, our language, and so forth. And we can think very deep thoughts. That's like sending a rocket very high up and fall back to the ground again. Because it's still thoughts, it's still anthropocentric, because we're still thinking in our language. You know? Whereas the shamatha is the technology to enable you to get enough thrust to be able to cut through all conceptual designations and penetrate to a domain of reality that's entirely beyond the scope of life. And that's what you do with Vipashyana, but you won't be able to sustain it without shamatha. And so here we are in the Ashta Sahasrika Prajnaparamita, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra in 8,000 verses. It is said, by cultivating the perfection of wisdom, you do not abide in form, nor in feeling, nor in discernment, nor in mental formations, nor in consciousness. We just listed the 5 skandhas. You're transcending these, clearly. In the synthesis of our own view, it is said, by means of mudras, mandalas, mantras, visualization, and recitation. So he pretty much just summed up state regeneration practice. Even with many tens of millions of eons, there is never any attainment of siddhis. One who abides in reality, this is reality as in Dharmata, upon abandoning all conceptualization. One who abides in emptiness, ultimate reality, upon abandoning all conceptualization, achieves success in this life and reaches supreme enlightenment. This needs a little bit of commentary, and that is, if you have achieved shamatha, and you have insight into emptiness, and you are motivated by bodhicitta, and you engage in state regeneration practice, well, there's all kinds of siddhis that arise. Many, many, many. Without having to go through all the Olympic gymnastics of all the kasinas and the form realm and formless realm. But if you don't have shamatha, they're not going to arise. If you don't have realization of emptiness, they won't arise. And so you must abandon all conceptualization and abide in emptiness. You abide in emptiness with Vipashyana, but you can't do that unless you've abandoned conceptualization. And that's with shamatha. So it always comes back to what Tzong so rightly and universally claimed: the core of all Buddhist meditation is shamatha Vipashyana. Everything else is derivative or roundabout that. That's right to the core. The Sambuddha Mahatantra said, it said, upon leaving the abode of conceptualization, and I don't think my translation is very good, I wish I could see the Tibetan, but I think it probably should be better even if, so upon leaving the abode of conceptualization, okay, escape velocity, you've transcended the noise, you've gone down to pure signal, no noise, even if a perceptive person does not realize this. So whether you know or not, according to the words of the Mind Vajra, so Buddha, for this person there is no doubt about siddhis. So siddhis arise by transcending this whole domain of conceptualization. With conceptualization, you go to the hell realms. So they stop thinking quickly. And you circle around in the ocean of the 6 types of existence. If you are liberated from conceptualization, you go to the unstained sphere of peace. That is, of course, nirvana. So cut the web of conceptualization. And I think we all have a sense of what he's saying here. That is, there are virtuous concepts or unvirtuous concepts, but this is, again, compulsive or obsessive ideation. And it's exactly what Shantideva says. One whose mind is distracted lives between the fangs of mental afflictions. Your immune system's shut. So if something really negative comes up, it's going to consume you. So I think that's very simply what is stated there. The Varochana of Isambodhi, in this it says conceptualization or obsessive thoughts turn into suffering. I think that's an empirically evidenced truth. For as long as they are not eliminated, there is no Buddhahood in this world, and there is nothing called omniscience. So there's no path. As long as your mind, it should be obvious. if your mind's still prone to obsessive thinking and thoughts, and so it's obsessive compulsive, to think of setting out on this royal highway of the Bodhisattva path is crazy. You're bringing a car that's already totaled. You might want to fix your car first. So in the Vajramana Tantra, it is said, in the exhaustion of all obsessive thinking or thoughts, great bliss perfectly arises. In the Vajrapanya Visheka Mahatantra, it is said in primordial consciousness free of conceptualization, the Jinas, that is the conquerors, the victorious ones, the Buddhas, of the past have become Buddhas. That's how they did it. By way of primordial consciousness that transcends all conceptualization. In that freedom from conceptualization, it is said that you gain success in Tantra, and this is literally secret mantra, or secret mantrayana. The pure results of that naturally transform into clear light. Okay, so that means primordial consciousness. And for one who dwells in conceptualization, cities do not arise. So by eliminating conceptualization, imagine the forms of Tantra. Eliminate them and then move into this whole realm of pure vision. Pure vision, the forms of Tantra, pure vision of Tantra, as in Samak, secret mantrayana. In the Adi Dhanotara Tantra, it is said, in order to achieve the Jnana-Kaya, Jnana means primordial consciousness, Kaya is embodiment, so in order to achieve the embodiment of primordial consciousness, one can say this is the Dhammakaya, the Tathagata recommended meditation that eliminates all compulsive, I checked it, there, it's right on the bottom of the page, and it's better than mental fabrication. This is the compulsive thinking, compulsive thoughts, or compulsive ideation. So you must go beyond that, must transcend that. And again, all of this is taking place in the Shamatha section, so we know what he's getting at. This is the tool you need to deal with this problem. And then you get the other problems of reification and so forth. Well, that's what the next chapter is for, of Vipashyana. The Vairochana Abhisambodhi, here in this it is said, those who long for the state of omniscience should continually strive for the total elimination of all forms of conceptualization. So just to pause for a moment, the theme of transcendence, I mean, we have this fundamental drive to find happiness, to be free of suffering, but I think it's quite well known, that many people very explicitly, and perhaps all people implicitly, have a yearning for transcendence. You know? And they'll join political parties, they'll join ISIS, they'll join the Republican Party, they'll become Buddhists, you know, a sense of belonging to something larger than yourself, transcending the confines of yourself. People taking, you know, monastic ordination, becoming yogis, but becoming, you know, there's just so many ways of trying to get beyond your skin, you know. And so in science, the fundamental technique since Galileo, to see beyond the veil of these anthropocentric appearances that are arising in dependence upon our human sense faculties. So we look around and we think we're seeing Tuscany. We're seeing an anthropocentric view of Tuscany. Because if you're a rabbit, a bumblebee, and so forth and so on, you're not going to see this. You're going to be living in a world that has something in common with ours, but you're experiencing something else, right? And so Galileo, profoundly religious person, a natural-born contemplative, as he wanted to know the mind of the Creator by way of the creation, he looked outwards, again, the motion of transcendence. He wanted to transcend this bubble of appearances arising to his mind, and so he brought greater sophistication to those appearances with his telescope and with his other instruments of technology, still appearances. But he wasn't after just more appearances. Oh, look, I can see dots moving around the big dot of Jupiter. He would use that as a launching pad of mathematics, the language of God, and then be able to infer, this was his fundamental belief, and it's a very reasonable belief, that using mathematics, which is not a human language, and based upon very sophisticated measurements of the appearances, he could then leap out of, inferentially, with the intellect, with thought, leap beyond the anthropocentric and think the thoughts of God. I think Einstein used the same terminology, to think the thoughts of God. What was God thinking when God created the universe? And scientists will say nature speaks in only one language, mathematics, Christian scientists who are Christians, I'm sure they've said for centuries, God thinks in the language of mathematics. And so that's one form of transcendence, to look outwards and to slip into a rarefied mode of conceptualization of pure mathematical thought. And you can infer things that are true beyond the sensory domain of human being, but I don't sense that you can transcend the form realm. I think they're accessing by way of intellect the patterns, the regularities, the mathematical principles and laws of the form realm, which are then manifesting in this world here. That's my speculation. But as long as you're embedded in thought, as contemplative in Christianity and Buddhism and so forth, and have known for centuries, as long as you're embedded in thought, you do not transcend to the ultimate. Right? And so here is another, so there's one way to achieve perfect objectivity, is to transcend subjective, the taboo of subjectivity, one of my favorite books that I've written, to transcend that by means of pure thought, which is then mathematics, and intellectually, again using what Aristotle thought was man's highest faculty, and that is reason, to then transcend our anthropocentricity and see reality as it is, as God sees it. There's one strategy, and it's been extremely productive, as we all know, for hedonic well-being, for technology and so forth. But the contemplative approach here, so clearly articulated, there's another way to transcend. It's not by looking outwards with rarefied abstract thought, it's by transcending thought entirely. And in transcending thought entirely, and transcending subjective appearances of the five senses entirely, then you transcend the anthropocentric bubble, and you tap into a reality that is ultimate. So it's a different strategy, they're complementary, but they certainly give rise. One is a magnificent source for hedonia, and gives us basically nothing at all for eudaimonia. And the other one is we look at the primitive nature of Tibetan culture, with being the highest. I don't think it was much else at all. But the level of contentment in the country was quite extraordinary. But immensely, inconceivably enriched, not only the great yogis, but the whole society, eudaimonically. So there's a trade-off there. On we go. So in the Vajrashekara Mahaguya Yoga Tantra, the point, the peak of the Vajra point Tantra, it is said evil spirits do not exist at all once the mind itself is purified. Your own mind is called Mara, and evil spirits are also your own mind. Clear out all ideation, for evil spirits arise from ideation. Hold fast to the mind, which is difficult to subdue, and eliminate desires. That's a theme that Dujun Lingpa Padmasambhava really emphasizes in the Vajra essence. And that is, they have this tremendous menagerie of all kinds of different spirits in Tibetan worldview. And just one by one he said, and this is a projection of this mental projection, and this is a projection of this one, and this one, and goes through all of them, and cutting them all off at the knees as having any objective inherent existence, and saying, subdue this one, and you subdue them all. Nagarjuna states the Buddhists have said that the characteristic of the cessation of the flow of wholesome and unwholesome ideation is emptiness. Of course, you can't be comatose, that doesn't work. You'd be free of all thoughts if you're just comatose. But this is where you're transcending ideation with insight. So the whole issue of transcending ideation, again, that's the shamatha element, penetrating through the emptiness, that's the Vipashyana element. Shantideva states, due to the isolation of the body, speech, and mind, distraction does not occur. As we withdraw body, speech, and mind from busyness, from entertainment, from distraction, and so forth, then distraction does not occur. Therefore, the world is to be renounced, and ideation is to be thoroughly rejected. In the Naimita, neither Manika, is in Tibetan, Manjujuba, entering yoga. It is said the mind settles in a meditative equipoise with the continual elimination of the pollution. The mind settled in it. Yeah, settled in. The mind settles in meditative equipoise with the continual elimination of the proliferation of ideation, called samsara. That's fine. Okay? So they're the same theme. But he's saying it so many times, I think he really means it. And he's drawing from so many sources. Saraha, the great Mahamudra master, Tilopa's teacher, and Tilopa was Naropa's teacher, and Naropa was Marpa's teacher, and Marpa was Narepa's teacher, and he was Kampopa's teacher, and then right on through the Kamapas. Sadhicial discipline. Its nature is isolation from mental afflictions and ideation. Its cooperative condition is reliance upon special, sustained attention. The benefit is that gross mental afflictions and suffering are suppressed, or subdued might be better. Gross mental afflictions and suffering are subdued. You want that as you lose base camp. If you're still drowning in gross mental afflictions and suffering, Vipashyana, authentic Vipashyana, really difficult. You'll get mugged. You'll be wanting to set out on the great voyage of Vipashyana, and you'll just be mugged. You have these street gangs just beating you up every step of the way. And as you cause mental afflictions, they just cause disappointment, depression, anxiety, and blah, blah, blah. You can't bring an ordinary mind to Vipashyana and expect great success. So the notion of skipping it is just, I don't know, it's a cheap trick. It's a shortcut that just doesn't go anywhere in the long term. And then people doing that for a year or two and then thinking they've achieved stream entry. I feel sorry for them. Because now they won't actually ever find stream entry. As long as they hold to that notion, oh, I've achieved stream entry, their chances of achieving stream entry are zero. Because they've deluded themselves into thinking they've already done it. Okay? It happens a lot. So now this has been a presentation of cultivating shamatha by itself. So it's possible in principle, and this is widely recognized, for the very gifted, just as they're extraordinarily gifted mathematicians and musicians and artists and so forth. Unbelievable, almost inconceivable brilliance, like a Michelangelo, a Da Vinci, a Mozart, an Einstein, and so forth, that so far transcend the normal. It's hard to imagine how one can be that brilliant, right? Well, there are people also brilliant in Dharma. Mingyur Dorje, disciple, he was one of those incredible prodigies. And so for such individuals, the extraordinary ones, they may right from the beginning be introduced to, let's say, emptiness, teachings on emptiness, middle way view. And they can go right into it, and they can simultaneously cultivate shamatha and vipassana. Shamatha focused on emptiness, and achieve shamatha by way of by way of vipassana. So they achieve the Chökyi simultaneously. It's not impossible. It's rare. But you're not nodding off. At that time, the eyes, unclear mind, you do not recall or think anything. Even though you are in such a state for a long time, you're unaware of the passage of time. When you are aroused from that samadhi, it's like waking up from sleep or being restored to consciousness after fainting, and you think, now it's happened to me. Or, what, like that. And so, I was far too generous, I think. I'm really quite strong in my rejection of the early interpretation. That was very charitable. I think it was